Very good. Good afternoon. My name is John Reiskind, and I'm this year's president of the Florida Free Speech Forum. Welcome to the October 11th meeting of the forum. We're so glad you have joined us by Zoom, but we're asking all of you to make sure that your microphones are muted now. And so make sure they're muted. We meet the second Monday of each month, September through May, with presentations at noon. Our forum does not endorse candidates, nor does it take sides on issue, other than the critical issue of exercising our right to free speech, and to that mission we are committed with a passion. Our guest speakers will share with us their knowledge for about half an hour or so, after which we have another half hour to ask them questions. You may type your questions in the chat column during the presentation, which I will present to the speaker. But you may also ask questions by raising your hand in the reactions box at the bottom. It is the responsibility of all of us to be very respectful to our guests and to all questioners. We ask that questions not endorse particular candidates or issues, simply ask questions that can help us all to learn more about our speaker and his or her topic. Paul Hargrave, indispensable, is our program chair and usually introduces our speakers, but he is out of town with family, so I will have that pleasure today. Kim Barton, our county supervisor of elections, follows in the steps of outstanding supervisors of elections of the last 60 years, Alma Bethay, Buddy Irby, Bev Hill, Pam Carpenter. She was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. She was a nationally honored basketball player in college, finally ending up as a player for the Gators. After receiving her degree from the University of Florida in advertising in 1985, she, among other things, coordinated the Florida Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services One Church, One Child adoption program. She joined the Supervisor of Elections office in this county in 1993 as its first outreach coordinator, and then director of that program in 2006. When I had the honor of working closely with her. Elected supervisor in 2016 and re-elected in 2020, it gives me great pleasure, personal pleasure, in introducing her today. She will be speaking on the upcoming special city election in Gainesville, as well as, most importantly, recent legislative election law changes as a result of Senate Bill 90. Welcome, Supervisor Barton.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. I'm going to put up my presentation. Let me share my screen.
Come up in a moment.
Do you all see it?
No.
Okay, hold on a minute. Let's see. Let me down here. I did the same thing. There we go. All right, that's
good.
all right. There we go.
Okay, now we have it.
All right. So thank you all. Now it wants to move on its own. But thank you all so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. There have been so much going on in the elections office. I do want to talk just a little bit about our upcoming special election. As you know, that we're having this election due to a seat being vacated, seat B by Commissioner Gail Johnson. The election, once it was vacated, we had to put on the election within 60 days of when the effective date of the resignation. So that really put us in a hurry. But the election would be held November 16th. And only City of Gainesville voters that live inside the city limits will be able to vote in this election. The voter registration deadline is fastly approaching, which is October 18th. We do have 5 candidates that have qualified to run for this seat. You can go to our website, votealachua.com, and you can get information on those candidates. I'm trying to, okay, there we go. So just so you know, there are many ways, of course, you can register to vote. You can share this with others. But one key thing I want to remind people of, the white drop box that's outside our office, there have been changes due to Senate Bill 90, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it is currently closed. It will not open again until the start of early voting, which will be November 12th. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that it is closed. You know, Alachua County, we're so used to that drop box being open, but due to Senate Bill 90, there are some changes. It will be open once again starting November 12th. But to register to vote, you can go to register to vote florida.gov or votealachua.com. If you're mailing in your application, make sure it's postmarked no later than the October 18th deadline. For vote by mail, also there are many changes with vote by mail. We'll talk about that in a little bit with Senate Bill 90. But vote by mail, the deadline to request a ballot to be mailed to you will be November 6th at 5 p.m. You can call us over the phone and request your ballot. There, as I said, there are some changes. There will be some additional information you will have to provide to us. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But all standing requests, if you have standing requests, ballots are scheduled to go out tomorrow, October 12th. I think that's tomorrow. Yes, got my dates tomorrow. And we will be fulfilling requests after that date as we receive them. Early voting is only for 3 days. Very unusual, as we know, but it's only for 3 days. And it's just this election because we had to put the election together so quickly. So it's just starting Friday, November 12th through Sunday, November 14th. The hours of early voting is from 9 to 6. There's only 2 locations this time. So it's here at the Supervisor of Elections office and Millhopper Branch Library. So from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Just wanted to add something else before I get into Senate Bill 90. Now, I did say the drop box is available starting November 12th, which is the start of early voting. Early voting ends on the 14th. The drop box will be available after early voting ends on that Monday from 8:30 to 5, which is regular office hours. And then on Tuesday, Election Day, we're going to have the drop box outside available. There will be attendance because, of course, there have to be someone there with the drop box, but it would be 7 to 7. So it'll be the same hours as the polls will open, so that it'll give folks a little earlier time if they need to drop their ballots off, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So now, of course, there's been much talk and still much talk about Senate Bill 90, which was signed into law May 6th. Is one of the most controversial issues of the 2021 legislative session. And there's lawsuits, of course, currently going on, but there are many challenges to this law. So we have the Florida Conference of the NAACP that's challenging it, Disability Rights Florida, the League of Women Voters of Florida, Common Cause, and some other organizations. In 2021 legislative session, more than 18 states enacted 30 laws that restrict access to voting, and more than 400 bills with provisions that restrict voting access were introduced in 49 states. Now, the challenges are that it's unconstitutional. It would cause harsh harm to Black and Hispanic voters, as well as the elderly voters and voters with disability. Now, recently, I think it was last Friday, Chief U.S. District Judge Mark Walker here in Florida has allowed the challenges to this state law to move forward. So, as I said, it's not over. And we don't know what's going to happen next year in the next legislative session, what changes there will be as well. But there's a lot of changes that we really need to be made aware of. So here, the first thing I want to talk about is third-party voter registration. You have a lot of organizations like the League of Women Voters who really do outreach third party. And that's a way to reach out to folks. And third-party voter registration organizations are those who go out and register voters. And there have been some changes into this process. So now the third parties have to provide a disclaimer when they sign citizens up to register to vote. So of course, they have to have the forms in no later than 14 days of book closing. But it used to be, no matter where you were in Florida, you could just turn in applications to any Supervisor of Elections office. That's no longer. You have to turn those forms in into the applicant's residential county supervisor. So what would happen is you get folks that have 5,000, 6,000 applications, they drop it on a Supervisor of Elections, and a lot of those forms are not even for their county, but they have to input them. So that's a new requirement. Another thing is that they have to let that applicant know that they may not deliver their form in time, which is required 14 days. But if book closing is coming up, you don't have 14 days. If you do a voter registration drive on Saturday and book closing is Monday, you don't have 14 days. You have to get those forms turned in by book closing. They have to tell the applicant they can deliver their own application in person or by mail. They have to provide that information to them, and they have to tell them how to register online and how to find out if their application was delivered. So what a lot of third-party organizations are feeling that these changes in the law is discouraging people from registering to vote through a third-party organization. You know, telling someone I might not turn your form in, of course, it's going to probably discourage someone. We have not had in Alachua County any major issues with people not turning in voter registration. It's very rare occasion that has happened. So but that's a change in the new law. And I know a lot of these organizations are not happy about it. Private funds, I know we've heard a lot about the Zuckerberg money and private funds. And a lot of supervisors of elections in the state of Florida, there was money that was available. And so I will be honest and out front, which I am, we did apply for that grant, and we did receive $707,000. And what we did with that money was to help our voters. Here in the state of Florida, a lot of supervisors use the same vendors to do their vote by mail. And it was, as you think back to the 2020 elections, we had a record number of requests for vote by mail. We had 75,000 requests for vote by mail for the general election. And that was a record number. And a lot of other counties as well. So it made it difficult for, we're all using the same vendors to try to have our ballots packet mailed out timely. So what some of the things that we did purchase, I would share with you. We didn't buy vehicles, it has been said, but we did purchase ballot drop boxes. so that as we know, we were in COVID and a lot of folks did not want to go in person to vote, whether it was early or at the polls. They wanted to vote by mail. We had a record number and they wanted to drop their ballots off in a drop box. So of course we used that money for that. We used money to buy a vote by mail system, even though we did not get it in time for the general election, but for future elections, we will have that. We bought a verification system to verify signatures. Of course, we still would be looking at them as well. If there is any issues, we have to present those to the canvassing board. But we did purchase some computers that would assist in those student precincts where, you know, the turnout is very high in the general elections. But a lot of our money went to equipment that would really help us. We also bought more electronic poll books. We spent $151,000 on that. So the money that we used to get this money, it wasn't any use for partisanship for us. We wanted to do things that was going to help the voters as far as educational materials about COVID, about early voting, about vote by mail. We did. So now the law, the legislature has changed that where we can no longer accept any private funds. We are prohibited from doing that as well. The only thing, if someone wants to provide us space as a polling place, that is acceptable. But any money that's private, we cannot no longer accept. And there are serious consequences to that. So next, the no solicitation zone. This is in the new law as well. It expanded the no solicitation zone to 150 feet of the drop box. So we all previously know we originally were at 100 feet, then we went to 150 feet from the entrance of the polling place. You could not do any solicitation within the 150 feet. Now you cannot do it within 150 feet of the drop box as well. So this new law imposes restriction on providing such things as, it's also added, you cannot provide food and water to people waiting in line to vote within the 150 feet, no solicitation zone. So you can no longer do that. And the concern from those that are the lawsuit is that the high turnout, the large number of areas where traditionally the wait times are, they feel they are in the traditional Black Latino voters in those traditional large number of polling places. So that's a concern. So just so you know, cannot provide water, you cannot provide food within the 150 feet, but you can outside of the 150 feet. And as you can see, this line is moving back further and further. So you have to catch voters before they get inside the 150. I mean, you have to catch them before they get inside the 150. So the big thing, the big changes, of course, is let's talk about voter registration. The new law, it does not change the process for new voter registration applications. Still the same, that process doesn't change. The new law does, however, change the process to update an existing voter record. So existing voter record, changing your address, changing your name and party changes, and how we request a vote by mail. So it changes the rules when requesting a vote by mail ballot, and that is it's really a big change. Voters are now required to provide additional information to establish their identity and their eligibility. So let's talk about what's new. Okay, so let's look at address changes. You know, the old law, you could submit it on a voter registration application. I think it jumped. Hold on one second. Let me go. Okay. So you could submit it on a voter registration application in person, by phone, by email, or a signed writing. It did not require you to provide your Florida driver's license or Florida ID or social security number. You could just call us over the phone and say, I'd like to make an address change. We would ask you what's your name, your date of birth. We would, verify your address that's in the record. You would just tell us what the new address is and we would take that. But now you still can, of course, make the address change on a voter registration application. But if you're calling us by phone or, you're sending an email, it now requires you to provide either your Florida driver's license number or Florida ID or social security number. And what's in our record, we have to verify whatever is in our record before the change can be made. So you don't have to, in your record, when we look you up in your record, if you don't have, all of those things in your record, if you just have one of those things in your record, that is what we need you to let us know so that we can verify. Now, if someone sends us a written notice of, I would like to update my address, and they sign it, they don't give us any of those identifying information, we cannot update their address. That means outreach for us. We got to reach out to that voter and let them know we need one of those identifiers in your record. You have to complete a voter registration application. You can do it online, you can come in person, but it has to be in the record so that we can verify at least one of those in the record. So when this law passed, we were really concerned about this because we had about 22,000 records that did not have driver's license, Florida ID, or social security number, had nothing in it. And it wasn't a requirement years ago. When I registered to vote, it wasn't a requirement. That wasn't something that was required on the form. So I was still registered, been voting for years. We decided that we wanted to be proactive, so we sent out a letter to those 22,000 voters to let them know if you're going to be, requesting, especially if you're going to be requesting to vote by mail ballot, we have to have that unique numeric identifier in your record, at least one of those that we can verify in order to send you a vote by mail ballot, in order to make an address change, or in order to, if you're requesting a party change or name change, we have to have that in your record. And so right now, out of those 22,000 we checked, we still have about 7,252 voters that do not have a unique identifier in their record. And when I say that, that's the driver's license or ID or social security number, last 4 digits. So we had people calling us and saying, I didn't get a letter. My neighbor got a letter. So it was like, okay, if you didn't get a letter, you're good. You have an identifier in your record. So I think we've come a long way from 22,000, but we still are going to be reaching out to these individuals. Now, if someone says, okay, I'm never going to move, I'm going to be at the same house until I die, I'm never going to vote by mail, I traditionally go to the polls or I vote early, then this is no concern for them. They don't have to worry about it. I'm never going to change my party, then that's not an issue for them. But if you are a traditional vote by mail voter, you need to make sure that you have at least one of those identifiers in your record. Putting all of them in there, then you have to never worry about which one you have. Sometimes, you have voters don't even know which one is in their record. So you can call us, we can tell you what's in the record. We won't tell you, we'll just say we have your driver's license in the record, or we have your last 4 digits of your social security number. But I encourage anyone that is not sure, even if you didn't get a letter from us, you're good. But if you're just not sure, you could just call us and we can verify that for you. Name and party change, the same thing. Now for name and party change, we used to you could email us or you could write us and say, I would like to change my name. I'd like to change my party. We cannot accept, it is only acceptable on a voter registration application. So that's what's changed with that. Only voter registration application that you can use to change your name or your party change. So that's the difference. And you can do that online or in person. Vote by mail requests. So vote by mail requests in the new Senate Bill 90, we cannot mail a vote by mail ballot without a validly submitted request on file. And here in our office, we never did that. It had to be a request on file. I think the legislature just wanted to make sure that that got in statute. So Florida's not an automatically mail ballot state. The only time we do mail ballot elections, if there's a referendum and there's no candidates on the ballot. But as I said, I think they wanted to make sure that that language got in the elections code. The big change with vote by mail, and I think voters will have to, it'll take some time for them to get used to this, is that voters will now have to request ballots more regularly and more often than they used to. It used to be you were good through 2 general election cycles. So you didn't have to, you're like, oh, I'm good. So now it's only good through one general election cycle. Now, when the legislature was, drafting this bill, they at one point wanted to cancel all vote by mail requests that was on the books. And that would have just been detrimental for a lot of people because they wouldn't remember that they wouldn't, it just wouldn't be good. So now it's good through, they said, okay, we're gonna grandfather in those who have existing vote by mail requests, and they will be good through the 2020 election. So they were good through the end of 2020, but then they will need to know that their request is expiring. So we're going to be doing outreach. We're going to be doing mailers to let folks know that all vote by mail requests will be expiring in 2022. And we'll send letters out as well that they need to make that request again. So. I'm sorry. Let's see here. So just like the request for change of address, change of name and party, all vote by mail requests must include either your Florida driver's license number, Florida ID, or your last 4 digits of your social security number. So there's no exception whatsoever. And that's whichever, as I said, can be verified in our record. That's why I always encourage people, if you're not sure what's in your record, just go ahead on and just update it and put everything in there. You can, put your driver's license number in there and the last 4 digits. It's not required. Only one of those are required, but because if you're calling in and you're not sure, it's good to have it in there. All written requests must be signed by the voter and must include that information. So if someone sends us a written request for a vote by mail ballot, if it doesn't include one of those identifiers that has to be in the record, then of course we'll have to reach out to them to let them know, excuse me, that we can't take their request until we have that in the record. Now, if a voter is requesting a vote by mail ballot for themselves, in writing, in person, or by phone, now what's in red is what's new. We always had to get your name, we always had to get your address, we always had to get your date of birth. If it was a written request, we always had to have your signature, but now it must include one of those identifiers. So that's the key to the changes of the new identifier that has to be provided and matches what is in your record. Let's see. Something has got, all right. I think something's got out of line here, but that's okay. We'll come back. All right. I'm sorry here. I'm so sorry. Just give me 1 second. Let me try to see if I can get back on track here. So previously, and we haven't done this in a while in Alachua County, but when we used to have primary elections, it would have an indication on the outside of your envelope, your party affiliation. But we have not done that, but they have put that in law that the mailing of or your secrecy envelope cannot bear any indication of your party affiliation. So that is in there as well. Something got off track somewhere, and I'm not sure where that went. Yeah, I am so sorry here. Okay, so there should be another one right after that. Okay, so here we go. So now I had mentioned, so if someone's requesting a ballot for an immediate family member, you can only request a ballot for yourself or an immediate family member or legal guardian. So all those things that I mentioned that you had to request for yourself, if you're requesting it for someone else, you have to provide your name, your address, your date of birth, as well as your identifying information and your relationship to the voter. And so that's new. So the whole thing with Senate Bill 90 is the, as I said, is the identifying information now is required. So for collecting, picking up someone's ballot, and I want to mention, since this kind of got off somewhere, immediate family is spouse or parent, a child, a grandparent, and the new law has added in grandchild. So a grandchild can request a ballot, pick up a ballot, as well as sibling of a designee or a designee spouse. So I want to make sure you know that as well. Now the law limits how many ballots one person can possess. So a designee who's picking up or returning a vote by mail ballot for another voter, it can lawfully possess only their own ballot and those of an immediate family member, in addition to 2 others. So there are 2 ballots that you could pick up of anyone else, only 2, but for your immediate family, if it's within the list of that I named, then you can pick those up as well. But remember who immediate family is. I just wanted to show you the law and what the law says, and because it is a crime to do that. So, you know, where you'd have people, you know, that will say, okay, I know a lot of people at the nursing home, they've asked me, can I bring their ballot? You can do 2 if they're not of your immediate family. It used to be folks would just go and just pick up ballots and bring them in. You can't do that anymore. Lawfully, you can only do 2 if they're not your immediate family. So that's very important. That and they, you know, they consider that as ballot harvesting. So and that was a way for them to stop that, the legislature. But when you think about that, when you have folks that are living in, you know, say for instance, a nursing home facility, they don't have any family, you know, it makes it quite difficult to have people bring in their ballots for them. Their family, their immediate family is, miles away, or in another state or in another, so it makes it very difficult for them. But always remember, vote by mail ballot in Alachua County. The postage is paid for return. We do have that. I'm thankful for the county commission and the city commission paying for the return. Now, in the law, I'm going to say this, it says you can only possess 2, but there is no way for me as a supervisor of elections, there is nothing that we keep track of how many ballots someone brings in. I'm just sharing with you what the law says. But there is no mechanism in place for me to say, okay, you brought in 2 ballots of someone that's not your immediate family. So I'm sure in the future, there may be something the legislature may be looking at, but there is nothing in place for us to be able to track that information. Let's see. So in the law, what they did is, because vote by mail ballot has been just so big, it takes a lot to canvass these ballots. They now allow us to be able to start early than we used to. It's 22 days for the general election. We can now start as early as 40 days before the election to canvass vote by mail ballots. And that's really going to be really helpful to supervisors of elections. And the canvassing board meetings, I always encourage people to come to the canvassing board meetings to see how ballots are handled, see the process. It's a public meeting. We do the logic and accuracy testing of the equipment. You can see how the elections are properly defined in the system. That's where we see that the names are correct on the ballots that's being cast at the testing. The equipment is behaving as we expected. If we bubble in a ballot that's an overvote, that the machine is recognizing that. If it's an undervote, it's recognizing that. So that's where we test, and citizens can ask questions. And I always encourage people to come see who the canvassing board members are. For a countywide election, it's a county judge, the county commissioner, and it's myself as well. For the upcoming city election, the mayor is serving on the canvassing board, the clerk is serving on the canvassing board, and they haven't named the at-large citizen yet, but we'll have one more person. So it's always, we'll put on our website the canvassing board schedule, as well as the City of Gainesville will have that on their website. They included in the law that supervisors of elections should not use his or her knowledge of the voter's party affiliation when verifying signatures. And that's not something we do anyway. When we're looking at signatures, and we tend to side with voters. What we're looking at, and I think a lot of people think that the signatures have to match exactly. No one signs their name exactly the same every time, but what we're looking for is similarities. We all have to go through training. The canvassing board has to go through training. The county canvassing board, we all go to training in Orlando, leading up to a presidential election, a gubernatorial election. So we do have a canvassing board meeting. So we're trained, my staff is trained when looking at signatures. So, and when they cannot determine, it's presented to the canvassing board to make the final decision. But we always try to, much as possible, we're looking for similarities. It could be the first letter, it could be how they, the slant of how their signature is, but we really do try to find similarities when comparing signatures on vote by mail ballot. A big thing is the drop boxes in the new law. It sets new restrictions on availability of drop boxes. And I can tell you, there are a lot of supervisors of elections who had permanent drop boxes in front of their offices that have had them removed. I have not had our drop boxes removed because I do want, when there's not an election, for folks to be able to drop in their voter registration applications. I want, you know, any information that people want to get to my office, if they can drop it in there, because it's not just a mail ballot drop box. But soon as the ballots are sent out, you know, what a lot of counties are doing, they're not making it available until the start of early voting. Now, when early voting starts, all of the early voting sites will have, you know, their drop boxes will be available until the early voting ends that day, and then it's closed until the next day of early voting. I have not decided for the 2022 elections how the drop boxes will be handled. I may decide, depending on budget, having them available maybe a week before early voting start. So it would just depend, but a lot of supervisors are saying, I'm not gonna do them at all. I'm not gonna have them outside. And I think for me, it's very important to have drop boxes outside, because you have folks that can't really, you know, walk as far. It's and then with COVID, they don't want to have to get out, go through the line inside to drop their ballot off. So I want to make it as accessible and easy to our voters here in Alachua County. We will have a drop box available. As I said, it's very limited for the upcoming election, but for next year, I really have to look long and hard how we can make it more accessible. One thing I did make the decision on, I am not going to remove the drop box. And when we do have it available, we will have people outside manning it, and they will be there to assist. And people will not have to get out of their car if they don't want to get out of their car. And if, you know, so I want to make sure that that's clear. I'm not removing the drop box. Now there'll be periods that is not available, but you know, you still have folks can mail it in. Before, when it's not available, you can, you know, bring it up to our office. So, so the new law says that drop boxes will be geographically located to provide all voters equal opportunity. So when I look at, you know, early voting, we will be adding a new early voting site here in Alachua County in Newberry at the Equestrian. For the 2022 election. So now we'll have 7 early voting sites. When I was elected, we had 3. And so now we'll have 7. And this new law clarifies that except for secure drop boxes at an office of a supervisor of elections, a secure drop box may only be used during the county's early voting hours of operation. Now, that says with the exception at the supervisors of elections office, but there's a lot of supervisors who made the decision that even the one at their office is only going to be available at the start of early voting. It requires that we designate the drop box site at least 30 days before the election. And for countywide elections, if there's any changes to that, the Division of Election has to approve that. Drop box accounting, it must be monitored continuously. So what a lot of people have one person monitoring, we always have 2. So if someone has to go, you know, to lunch, then there's still someone there. But we prefer to have 2 people monitoring. And it used to be in the 2020, we hired sworn officers to watch overnight the drop boxes, because we had 24/7 drop boxes. But when we really look at it, you know, most people, we didn't get that many in the drop box overnight. But because Alachua County was so used to having that drop box, we had the security surveillance camera. The law said that is not good enough. That is, no, it has to have people there monitoring the drop boxes. So, you know, we did that. We wanted to have our voters that what they were used to, but now there is a change. And we will set those early voting hours. We will set those drop box times. It must be emptied at the end of early voting, which it always has. We take account of it. They have to, the monitors, they keep account of how many ballots are being dropped in there. They have a record of that. And then when it comes back to the office, we match up the numbers of what they have and what we have. So we never had an issue with that. Also to the drop box, what was really concerning to supervisors of elections, any supervisor who violates the drop box requirements, we could face $25,000 in fines. So just want to throw that out. That's something, of course, we're very concerned about. That's why I want to make sure that we have 2 people monitoring the drop box. All right, so quickly, keeping up with time. Let's see. All right, so another new thing. Let's see. I think canvassing board meetings. The duplication of ballots must be an open and accessible room. We've always had it open and accessible. We always invite people to come. And so observers must be able to see the ballot markings and duplication. We're going to kind of change the room a little bit around so that where the observers are, we'll have the duplication table right there so they can see the duplications of ballots. And if any observer objects to a duplicate ballot, such ballot will be presented to the canvassing board. We have to record the serial, the ballot serial number. It has to be in the minutes. So it's just a process now, but we always here in Alachua County, if anyone ever has questions about anything in a canvassing board meeting, we take the time to explain it, the process to them as well. So all canvassing board members' names must be published on the supervisor's website. That's in Senate Bill 90 now. Upon completion of the logic and accuracy testing, we will have the logic and accuracy testing for the City of Gainesville election. That'll be on November 1st at 10 a.m. All public notices must include their names and any of the alternate canvassing board members. And this is new, each political party and each candidate can have one watcher on each canvassing board meeting to view directly or on a display screen ballots being examined for signature matching and other processing. So what we're going to do is we're going to have it where it's up on a big screen so that they will be able to see that. So we'll have that available. Ballot inspection. So voter certificates and envelopes are open to public inspection. When we canvass ballots, normally when we have a scheduled canvassing board meeting, 30 minutes before the canvassing board meeting, that is inspection time. Anyone that wants to come and inspect the certificates or the envelopes on vote by mail, the only thing is you cannot video someone's signature, you cannot take pictures of it, you can only view. So that's in the law. You cannot, do that. That's against the law. Upon request prior to canvassing, a candidate, political party, political official, or authorized designee, there must be granted reasonable access to review, inspect ballot materials before canvassing or tabulation. So that means, it has to be reasonable access. When you get a whole lot of people that are wanting to review something, then we've got to do a schedule. We're going to be doing a schedule. It'll be on our website if someone wants to review something. Now we do have public inspection period 30 minutes before canvassing board, but if someone wants to see something prior to that, then we'll have a schedule. So we must publish a public notice about how to request to see the signature comparison if you wanted to see that. So as again, observers may not copy a voter's signature. All right. So we're down to question and answer. I hope that I have covered, and what I was trying to do is basically cover those things that affect voters. There are some things in Senate Bill 90 that just really pertains to me in the operation of the office. It really didn't have anything to do with, the voters or process with voters or the public. So at this time, if you have any questions.
Let me just introduce that. You can
Stop share.
stop sharing. And let
Okay.
me thank you very much for a very informative talk. I know you will have we will have some interesting questions. I have a whole bunch of them, but
Oh, boy.
let's all adhere to our mission of supporting the First Amendment by advocating, protecting, defending, et cetera, et cetera. I want to get to the questions. You can put your question in chat. I don't think I have any questions yet in chat, or you can, raise your hand and I will call on you in the order of the raised hands. We'll start with Horace. Unmute yourself and then you can ask your question. Very good. And we'll try to accommodate you. There's no rigid time.
Kim, I received a letter that I needed to update my driver's license or whatever. And when I did, and I printed the receipt, it said I had completed it, but when I received it, my driver's license and my social security number was not on the form. Is that for privacy purposes?
The letter, did you receive the letter from me, from my office?
Well, I received a letter from you, but I ended up having to go through the state. And when I put in all my information, it said complete, application successful. And I printed it, but it did not show the last 4 digits of my social security number, the last 4 numbers of my driver's license. And so I printed that because my question is, I guess I need to call you to verify, right?
Yes, because I can look you up to see if your information
Let's
is.
don't do that right now. Let's don't do that right now. We're in a meeting. But
Yeah.
I will contact your office and I will
Yes,
verify
sir.
that. And,
Let me ask you something. Are you exempt? Are you exempt?
What do you mean by exempt?
Are you, you're an attorney, you're a lawyer, you may fall under some of the statutes where your information is exempt.
Exempt from what?
I don't think I am. I don't think I am.
Okay, I just want to check. Because if someone's exempt from public record.
Trying to find people addresses, and they say that's confidential addresses. I'm like, oh, really? What that's all about? So I know where you're coming from, but no, I don't think I'm exempt.
Okay.
Now, pick up per election cycle. Oh, you said that people can pick up 2 people outside of their families
Correct.
to bring to, okay. How many per election cycle? In other words, if I do it this week, does that mean I can't pick up anybody outside of my family for the rest of that election cycle?
Oh, it's unlimited for your immediate family, if they're your immediate family.
I understand that. But what I'm saying is, if I pick up 2 of my neighbors.
That's it for that election cycle.
Ooh.
For that particular election.
See, that's very restrictive, and everybody that's on this Zoom need to make note of that, because I would think that every time I go down to your office, I could bring 2 people outside of my family. But
No.
That is very restrictive. Okay, we'll go to another question from Don Fields. Don, unmute yourself first. Yeah.
Unmute. Okay,
Now
that worked. Took 2 clicks, nonetheless. My question has to do with the verification of candidates. for election, we had the Dion McGraw thing. And so, and I called the supervisor, your office, and spoke to a person there who told me that the supervisor doesn't really have the investigative power to verify someone's address is within whatever requirements it's required to be in. And I was wondering what is being done to remedy that, because the effect was essentially disenfranchising voters.
Okay. And I know that there's still some things going on with that particular situation. So let me say it this way. My job is ministerial, okay? The Department of State, Division of Elections, when we go through training, we're only supposed to be looking at the four corners of the documents. We provide all the information, anyone that signs up to run for office, we provide, saying that you have to live in this district. If you're not in this district, you have to live in this district at the time of qualifying. Do we try to go above and beyond? Of course we do, but it's up to the person that is signing up to run to know, where that lies. There are, the property appraiser has that information. We have maps, we have, we do try to provide information, but it is ultimately up to candidates to know the boundaries or the districts in which they run.
Very good. We'll get to Don. I have a brief question that I'll put in myself. How if the legislation under For the People were to pass, how would that impact on the regulations that Florida Senate Bill 90 have put into place?
Okay, I didn't catch the beginning of what you said.
If the federal government passes the For the People legislation, how would that affect our regulations within the state of Florida as they presently exist?
You said for other people?
I think it's called For the People bill. I'm not sure if
For the
it's.
people, I'm not sure what that is, and it might be something else in my mind. So can you tell me a little bit about it? Then
I'll have to, it has to do with federal legislation that's been proposed, and I don't know the details either. So we'll go to the next question. I think Don had his hand up. Did you want to ask a question? Yeah.
I served under you during the last election cycle, and I'd like to thank you for having a very well-run organization. I worked both at the voting where you were counting the ballots. I opened up more ballots. I've still got blisters on my finger from that, but it's a well-run organization. And also I worked at the polls, and it's really interesting to meet the people and to watch the whole process. And I think for anybody that has time, they should be part of the process. I think it's really educational for you, and you'll really understand what the democracy is all about.
Do you have a question? But thanks. Rick Gold.
Thanks also for a great presentation. And I did appreciate working at the polls until COVID hit. I want to know to what degree science factors into comparison of signatures. The forensic handwriting analysis is a science that is, empowered document examiners for decades. And to what degree are you using that and training those who are comparing signatures?
Well, as I said, the Department of State provides that training to us, and it is from a document examiner that teaches us, when you how to kind of determine if it's not someone's handwriting, or it's it really gives you a lot of different examples. When you see someone signing their name slanted one way and all of a sudden you see it's going another different direction, of course, you're gonna, be leery that that's the same person. One of the things that, while we're talking about signatures, I want to mention that if, you have someone that's had injuries to their hands, or they may have their Parkinson, or, what we do accept, if someone, their signature, and they get a stamp made of their signature, because their signature is probably going to change even more, as long as they use that same rubber stamp. If they do a voter registration application with that stamp, and after that, they use that same stamp on their ballot, it is acceptable by law. But, we have that training, and if anybody wants to see that training, I will make it available so that you can, Mr. Gold, you can see what rigorous training we go through. I'll be happy to put that out to anyone so that you can see it.
Very good. Horace, you had a
Yes.
brief, yeah.
Yes. Kim, and this is a super question for me, because I have watched state legislatures across the country try to change voting rights laws. And to me, super voters should lower their anxiety, because none of this means anything to me. Whatever you said this new law is about, I've written a list of all of this, and it really doesn't bother me. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is the voter ID. I have been voting since 1969, and every time I went to vote, I've had high school teachers sit there representing the supervisor of elections, and they still say, Horace, I need to see your ID. So I don't see how that's a major problem. My question to you is this. You are a member of the Supervisor of Elections Association.
Mm-hmm.
You're an officer, correct?
Yes.
How many other supervisors of elections in the state of Florida are under attack like you?
A whole lot of us. I have, it's more and more. We had Pasco County Supervisor of Elections had people outside his house, even though, I mean, it's public knowledge, he and his wife is divorced, but he has young kids and is, still staying at the same house, but, threatening and picketing outside his house. And a lot of folks are being threatened quite a bit. I've had, emails sent to me of threatening nature. But we see it more and more, more and more. That's why our association works very closely now with FBI and Homeland Security. So it's getting very serious. I was on a national call with the FBI director, supervisors of elections and elections official across the state. And one of the other states, I mean, she just cried of all the harassment that she was receiving. And it's making supervisors not, elections officials not want to be part of this job, to do what they love doing, anymore, and of course I receive it. But I feel like this is something I love to do. I've done it for over 30 years, and I'm going to continue to do it. And if I feel threatened, bodily harm, then I'll do what I need to do to, of course, to protect myself. But it's more and more. We're feeling the heat more and more.
I did not know what your answer would be, but I had an inkling of what your answer would be. And what I would like to say to voters across the country is that to fight back against what you and other supervisors of elections, county commissioners, city commissioners, and school board members are going through is commitment. If there is a commitment to make the voting system work, you won't have to worry about anything, and nobody else will have to worry about anything. Because let me tell you something, we talk about super voters. Super voters need to invite some of their lame voting friends to become super voters. And once everybody becomes a super voter, then you can use these laws and threats to intimidate the voting process and democracy. And that's all I got to say for this one.
Very good, Horace. Jane Frockman.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the service you do. I was just, I also served as a volunteer of the last election, which I found very interesting and worthwhile. And I just wondered if the new laws affected the volunteer process in any way. This is both, this is the observers that come with the party, and then there's also some other volunteers that participate. So are there changes there?
Well, there's no, you're talking about poll watchers, those
Poll
that
watchers,
are with the now, they still, there's no change in that. There is a change with, we used to, all these outreach events we did, we would get invited to, they'd say, no charge for you all because you're providing a service to the community. Now we have to pay. I have to pay whatever fee it is to be at these events. Also for volunteers, and I still hadn't gotten an answer on this just yet from the Department of State, but the way it reads is I have to pay volunteers to come and man our booth. But you have some supervisors saying, I don't, so when we had our last statewide meeting with the supervisors, we were asking some questions with the general counsel, and some things we couldn't get a clear answer on. So you got some people saying, well, I'm just going to use my staff to be at these outreach events, but I have a very small staff. My staff is a staff of 14. So they can't be out every weekend, and still, so some are still letting folks volunteer because people don't want to get paid. Volunteer. Okay. They don't want to get paid for doing that. That's something they enjoy doing. And so we haven't gotten really clarity on that one, but I know far as events, we do have to pay now. Where, like the downtown festival, we have to pay for those things now.
Very
so
good.
That affects my budget, of course.
Right. Since I decided to raise my own hand so I could say something, in general, legislation should be passed to solve problems. And some of the legislation hasn't been directed to that, but you did mention one problem that may need some legislation, and that is long waits, long lines in certain precincts.
Yes.
And I've been trying to think about penalties for having such a long line, whether it should be the county commission or the city commission, depending on where the election is, that long lines mean that there weren't sufficient resources to address those long lines, and there ought to be consequences for long lines. People shouldn't have to wait 6, 7, 8 hours to vote. And
that's a long time.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, I realize this is a touchy subject perhaps, but what sort of legislation could be passed to address that problem?
Well, I tell you, 2018, if you all may recall, our turnout for gubernatorial elections never been very, very high. But in 2018, precinct 59, who barely ever, always have very low turnout in gubernatorial. So we look historically of turnout, we always look, we plan. But this particular for this particular in 2018, that was the one we had, and that was at the what is that called?
The Wyndham.
Paramount, the Paramount.
Yeah.
You remember that? The Paramount. The lines are way out. Because and it never happened. I mean, it never happened. That was one that just threw us off. But what was happening is students normally don't turn out for those elections, but
Yeah.
students were just, wherever they live, they were just coming there. And we had to get more, we had to get more even check-in stations there. I went out there and checked in voters, it was crazy. We couldn't believe it. We were just in shock because it never happened. So we always plan, but this was really, truly unexpected. And I think the wait times was an hour. That for me, that was too long. And a lot of that was, they were in the wrong place. They were just coming there because they were students, but they were in the wrong place. So what we've done is, we've gotten tablets now. We've hired people, more people to go down the line, checking folks in to make sure, going down the line to make sure they're in the right polling place. With that money that we got from that private grant, we bought more laptops so that in those high student precincts, all the student precincts, we've additional laptops so that we can make sure people are not standing in line, and then when they finally get in there, they're in the wrong place. So we're doing that now. And so I don't know in terms of legislation, that's not my, but that was the first time that ever, I think the only other time here in Alachua County when early voting first started in 2000, remember in 2004, and they were wrapped around the county administration building.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, we generally, don't have, it's letting people know when are the best times to go as well. So
Right.
that's really important. So I wouldn't know in terms of, but that is a concern in a lot of counties. You have you saw in Broward County, different counties, people are in line for hours. Most of our polling places, people are in and out, pretty quickly.
Right. And
But that was the unexpected.
I would say if there are endemic problems, in other words, over 2 election cycles, they have a problem, maybe that has to be addressed. One last question from Don, and unmute yourself, and then we'll wrap this up. And this has been quite interesting.
One thing I learned being at the polls and watching the people come in,
Different Don.
I asked, am I online?
No,
Yes.
actually, it was Don Fields, but if you're both named Don, you can both ask your question. So,
This is a quick one.
yeah, okay.
I signed in as Donald, so.
Donald, yeah, okay. So,
Go ahead.
Anyway, I'll let Don and Donald both speak. So Don, finish. Yeah.
I have a quick one. All they have to do is take out their driver's license before they get to the place where they are asked to do the thing, and that cuts down a whole lot of time. There's little tricks that you can teach the people that are running the election to speed that up if you don't already. So that's all for me.
And piggybacking on what he said, we always encourage voters to check their registration to make sure it's current. The worst thing is going, waiting till election day and you're in the wrong polling place because you moved and you haven't updated. And we always, even when we send out sample ballots, we say, check your status, because it could cause delay, because if your address, and it may send you to another polling place, your new address may send you to a whole new polling place. So it's important to check your status prior to election day. Don't wait till election day.
Yeah, Donald.
Yeah, my question is that, well, a democracy is supposed to both encourage and facilitate voting to get people out. And my question is my concern is with SB 90, a lot of things that facilitate voting, like the water and food and voter, I hate the term harvesting. I mean, it's like
Oh, yeah.
community helping, it's community service. And it eliminates volunteers who will actually help the people you identified, like in nursing homes and are old and ill and so forth, to get out. So do you know anything about how the laws that DeSantis has put into place are being challenged? Are they going after these picky things that
Oh yeah, those organizations that, I mean, we're right now, I'm having to answer all these things that we have to send in, all the supervisors across the state. It's like weekly, if it's something from the NAACP versus, the Secretary of State, we're named defendants, the Supervisor of Elections. Let me just say this. With this bill, we were not, as an association, we were not for any of this stuff. We're the ones that are in the trenches and do the job. So you have legislatures that, know better than we do. We can talk to them, we can say, this is gonna have this kind of effect, but they pretty much had made up their mind how they were gonna vote. But as an association, let me tell you, Senate Bill 90 could have been worse than what it is. If it had not been some things changed at the last minute, it could have been just really worse. Because one thing was, we were going to have to, when people come in to drop off their ballots, we were going to have them fill out paperwork and show their ID. It was just going to back up the line. It was just going to make it worse. So there was a lot of things that, as one of the things was for vote by mail ballots, there were requests that they wanted us to do away with all vote by mail requests and have everybody start over. So thank goodness, they agreed to through 2022. But let me tell you, we as Supervisors of Elections Association, we didn't agree with a lot of this stuff. We were not happy with a lot of it. But we don't make the laws. We can tell them what we think and what we see will happen. But we have to follow the laws. And I wanted to mention one other thing before about the school board. Like I said, it was very unfortunate thing that happened. But I know for me and for my office, what our role is in there, that once again is ministerial. We're looking at, how we can better do things, but in terms of saying where somebody lives or don't live, or saying they do or don't, that's not my job. Our job is to look at the paperwork, look at the four corners. That's what's in the statute. Look at the four corners, not the accuracy of the information. That's not the Supervisor of Elections job. We are not to look at the accuracy of the information. We're just making sure that what's supposed to be filled out is filled out. But as I said, it's a very unfortunate situation.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming. You had a brief, well, your name is not Don. I want to thank you very much for coming. I want to ask all of you online and your friends, and pass the word, to join us online for the next meeting of the Florida Free Speech Forum on Monday, November 8th, when our guest speaker will be our new state's attorney for Florida's 8th Judicial Circuit, Brian Kramer. If you wish to comment on today's meeting or offer suggestions or to get help Zooming, please email us at floridafreespeechforum@gmail.com. And for more information about the forum, please visit our website, floridafreespeechforum.org. We will be posting this talk, as we have last year's talks, as videos online. So you can, if someone else wants to tune in, you can refer them to that. And so thanks all of you for joining us today. And Florida Free Speech Forum is now adjourned, and we'll see you next month. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.